It's hard to believe, but the Trump administration has only been in power for less than 3 months, and it seems that we are being buried beneath an avalanche of civil and human rights abuses. But perhaps the most evil act of the Trump administration yet has just occurred, and to discuss it, I am bringing in my friend and yours, lawyer Pisco of Pisco's Hour of Live and Learn, the victorious conqueror of Tim Pool, and another conservative lawyer in the best Tim Pool debate that you have ever seen. We'll talk about that in a separate video. But let's talk about this first. Pisco, it's good to see you, number one. Number two, what the hell is going on? Can you explain this act of grotesque cruelty of the Trump administration? Because I think it will shock people who are otherwise numb to what the Trump administration has probably been doing.
No, I super appreciate that, Josiah. This, for me, is one of the most reprehensible actions of the Trump administration. They have admittedly, by their own accord in a filing, said that they deported a person who had been granted withholding from removal. That's a kind of legal status. It's a protection from persecution that an immigration judge can grant for someone who has a very high likelihood of being tortured or persecuted in their home country. They deported this person without any process, without going to court at all, and have now sent him back to the place where he was fleeing from.
So, yeah, my understanding, the story broke yesterday. It's gone viral now, courtesy of an article in The Atlantic, which we'll pull up here. And this is, I mean, everybody's reacting to this. And I know I brought it to your attention and you dedicated the rest of your stream at the time to discussing it. But just so I understand correctly, this is a person, yes, he is an immigrant, but it was decided by an immigration judge of authority, of proper jurisdiction, that he was not to be deported. And he came here, I believe, in 2011, if I'm not mistaken. He has since become a father. He is married a U.S. citizen. He is the father of a 5-year-old with special needs who himself, or the child itself, is also an American citizen. And not only did they effectively violate the judge's order by deporting him, the Trump administration, which notoriously never admits mistakes, is actually admitting this in a court filing?
Yeah, that's right. So typically when you're sort of picked up by ICE or the Department of Homeland Security and you don't have any sort of legal status here, they may charge you in a notice to appear. It's a charging document as removable. But one of the things that they have to do is demonstrate, and they have the burden to prove that you are in fact removable. But also, people who are in removal proceedings have the opportunity to raise defensive claims. So one claim that you can raise in defense is asylum or withholding. Very often you file asylum and withholding at the same exact time. It appears in this case that he was time barred from applying for asylum because that's a 1-year requirement. You have to apply within 1 year. But he was able to apply for the in defensive posture, the withholding of removal, which is a higher standard, and an immigration judge granted it, which is even rarer. And so this is an individual who went through the process, showed his claim to an immigration judge. That claim was a higher burden than asylum. He had to show, more likely than not that he was going to be persecuted in his home country.
So 50 plus 1.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so it's a higher burden than most asylum claims. And he was able to demonstrate to the satisfaction of the immigration judge that he should not be removed. It was against the law for them to remove this person. And the filing is absolutely shocking. I mean, the Trump administration admits to it, and then they say, well, even though we did so, we're not going to do anything about it. And court, you can't force us to do anything about it. And the scope of what they're saying here is essentially, once we ship you off to a slave labor camp in El Salvador, there is nothing that anyone can do about it, even if you're a U.S. citizen.
So let's talk about this. So again, The Atlantic was the one who really broke this story into a viral status in their first 2 paragraphs. The Trump administration acknowledged in a court filing Monday that it had grabbed a Maryland father with protected legal status and mistakenly deported him to El Salvador, but said that U.S. courts lacked jurisdiction to order his return from the mega prison where he's now locked up. The case appears to be the first time the Trump administration has admitted to errors when it sent 3 plane loads of Salvadorian and Venezuelan deportees to El Salvador's grim terrorism confinement center on March 15th. Attorneys for several Venezuelan deportees have said the Trump administration falsely labeled their clients as gang members because of their tattoos. Trump officials have disputed those claims. But in Monday's court filing, attorneys for the government admitted that the Salvadoran man, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, had been deported accidentally. Quote, although ICE was aware of his protection from removal to El Salvador, Abrego Garcia was removed to El Salvador because of an administrative error, the government told the court. Trump's lawyer said the court has no ability to bring Abrego Garcia back now that he is in Salvadorian custody. So I want to get into some reactions from this because Vice President J.D. Vance has offered a despicable lie in defense of this colossal civil human rights abuse, this act of abject cruelty from the Trump administration. We actually have some rank and file Republican lawmakers, interestingly, expressing some concern about this, perhaps too tepid. We'll get into that, but I'm curious. One of the first questions, Pisco, which is going to be on the minds of people about this is, does the Trump administration have, if the Trump administration is saying the court can't order them to retrieve Abrego Garcia, set that aside for a moment. Does the Trump administration have the power, the capacity to get him back if they wanted to?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, it's a separate sovereign country, El Salvador is. Now, Trump has pretty good relationships with the president/dictator there. And so, assumedly, if he really wanted him to come back, it's within his power. The problem is he doesn't care to exercise that power. There's no indication that they, even though they acknowledge this mistake, have any intention of rectifying it. What they want to do.
So can we stop there for just a second? So just to be clear, through diplomacy, through exercise of soft power, the Trump administration has the ability to at least make a good faith effort to get this man back from the hellhole that they sent him to unlawfully, the very hellhole he was trying to escape from in some respects because he was under threat of torture. He made a credible case to an immigration judge that his life was in jeopardy, and they have sent him back to a prison notorious for such things in the very country he was trying to flee. But we have no evidence that the Trump administration is even attempting to do so, right? They seem content to just say, yeah, we screwed up and wash their hands of it.
100%. And really, you have to wonder if Trump really wanted to get someone from that jail, do you think that he couldn't? No, this is all a kind of posture of feigned weakness in court to say, hey, we can't really do anything. We can't control what's going on over there for the purpose of contesting the jurisdiction of the court under habeas and really the Article 3 jurisdiction, the federal court jurisdiction in general, by having this kind of posture of weakness or of lack of control, when really it's America and Trump is the president of the United States. If he wanted to get someone out of there, he could get him, but he has shown no inclination to do so.
Well, you have seemed eager to pick a fight with the current Vice President of the United States. And so let's talk about this for a minute. Pod Save America host John Favreau reacted to the story by saying, any comment on this? Marco Rubio, Secretary of State. How about you, J.D. Vance, the Vice President? Elon Musk, Shadow President. You just admitted to accidentally sending an innocent father from Maryland to a torture dungeon in El Salvador, and you refuse to do anything about it. To this, the vice president, who has nothing else to do because he's effectively window dressing even more than most vice presidents, since Elon Musk and Donald Trump are co-presidents, he says, my comment is that according to the court document you apparently didn't read, he was a convicted MS-13 gang member with no legal right to be here. My further comment is that it's gross to get fired up about gang members getting deported while ignoring citizens they victimize. So would you like to respond to the vice president?
Yes. Classic J.D. Vance, classic demagogue. First of all, it's irrelevant whether or not he had a conviction or whether he's an MS-13 member. So just stepping back, he was granted withholding of removal. That means that you could not deport him legally. And that should be the only thing coming out of your mouth, is that we made a huge mistake. Second, there is absolutely nothing in the record that there's a conviction of this person. Just absolutely zero a record of any kind of criminal conviction. So the J.D. Vance, who I assume would have access to such information, I would assume he would be apprised of that. And then third, the allegations of him being a member of MS-13 are tenuous at best. There's at one point, there was a bail that was not granted to him when he was in removal proceedings, but that allegation of being a part of MS-13 is based entirely on hearsay of a police report of an individual who the police did not credit and like what he was wearing that day. It's complete garbage. And trust me, if we thought that he was an actual MS-13 member, we would have something, tangible.
More substantive, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And I'm assuming he would not have been granted withholding of removal.
So, yeah, again, while you were talking, I was pulling up the very spicy tweet of a gifted attorney who referred to J.D. Vance as A lying fuck. He says you're a lying fuck. You said he was a convicted MS-13 gang member. He's not. Retract that claim. The determination was made at bail hearing that was based on his clothing, hearsay that not even the cops believed, and a blatantly false report. He won his withholding claim, which, as you say, is a higher burden. So listen. I guess next question. I mean, we're just hearing about this story. It is going viral. The outrage is potent, but quite frankly, not enough. You could easily make the case that the outrage is not disproportionate to the event which predicated the outrage. I mean, I know you've been challenging Democrats, sitting Democratic politicians on social media. How much should they be talking about this?
They should be talking about this a lot because it's not just one isolated incident. It's a series of attacks using immigration and people who, aren't very sympathetic in the eyes of the public. Here I'm talking about alleged illegal immigrants, alleged gang members, alleged supporters of Hamas. They're doing this specifically to have their base sort of support them in this era of fear, but trying to get authoritarian control and attacking the First Amendment or using kind of like no procedures to deport people, right? No procedures to deport alleged members of Tren de Aragua in the Alien Enemies Act deportations. No procedures to deport someone who is legally protected from removal. I mean, the whole thing is called withholding of removal. And in just 2 seconds, he's thrown on a plane and sent back to the place where he's legally prohibited from being deported to, when all they would have to do to reopen his case is, adduce additional evidence in the actual immigration court. And all of this, based on the determination that was made by an immigration judge, not a federal judge, right? A federal Article 3 judge, but an immigration judge under the Trump administration. So this determination of withholding was made in 2019 when Trump was in office, when he was in control of the immigration judges. And so it's all just showing that the Trump administration is testing. And these arguments about jurisdiction apply both to illegal immigrants, lawful permanent residents, and also, yes, citizens. Imagine that Trump just grabbed a U.S. citizen and threw him in an El Salvadorian prison and said, oops, sorry, administrative error. We thought that you were an illegal Tren de Aragua member. And sorry, court, you can't order us to do anything about it. That is really what he's arguing here. And it's a profoundly dangerous place for this country. And of course, Democrats should be all over it.
So we're going to close with this. I want you to react. This is a Republican Representative Gonzalez who reacted to this story on CNN. We're going to play this clip, and then you and I will react to it in real time because I've not seen it, and I'm curious if his level of outrage is proportionate to the grave abuse that the Trump administration dealt to this man.
The Trump administration now admits, and this is in a court filing, that it mistakenly deported a Maryland father to his home country of El Salvador, which he fled due to gang violence. The administration says it can't bring him back now because he's already over there. Does that concern you?
It does, and this is where I think it's so important that we focus on convicted criminal illegal aliens. Last year, I wrote ICE, and I got a response. I asked, how many convicted criminal illegal aliens are in our country? The number is 662,000. That's astronomical. So in my eyes, let's go after that pool of people. Once again, these are people that are convicted in a court of law that should not be put in the same category as maybe some of these other folks. I really would like us to hamper on that. If we do that, I think that keeps Americans safe, exactly the agenda items the president ran on, and it also highlights the fact that we're focused on deporting these convicted criminals.
So I don't know about you, Pisco, but that was woefully inadequate, and this man should be mocked and shamed publicly by his constituents and really anybody for his fecklessness. What do you think?
100%. Yeah. I mean, he's barely, not even criticizing the administration. He's saying he has concerns and saying, maybe I would appreciate you to go after criminals. You think, but what about the illegal deportation? And J.D. Vance, rather than saying, I'm sorry, nation, or I'm sorry, Mr. Abrego Garcia, like, he's trying to morally justify an illegal deportation that his own administration said it was a mistake. And the most we can get is, I have some concerns. This is an attack. It's an attack on due process. It's an attack on our rights, and it's an attack on the rule of law. And so if all you can muster are those kinds of, feigned words, the kind of Susan Collins-esque concerns, you're not much use to the people of the United States.
Well, I'm sorry to say, Pisco, my instinct is that this is the best we're going to get from Republicans. What you just saw was the very best that we are likely to get, which is really sad indeed. I know you're going to be keeping an eye on this, and I'm sure you'll be covering it on your own channel. And speaking of which, where can people find you, Pisco?
Pisco's Hour on YouTube, Pisco Liddy on Twitter. And thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Perfect.
Killed it, man.
Yeah, this is